I realized that everything I did back in Citibank or Cargill was entrepreneurship, because the more I learned about entrepreneurship, the more I realized it doesn't need to be just company founders. I saw employees as entrepreneurs. So talking about how organizations, they can nurture the innovative mindset of their employees. And that was a new drive to my consulting company, was for corporations to develop their environment to nurture ideas from employees, and how to compensate them, how to train them.
Welcome to Unfiltered at Distillery Labs, a podcast where we talk about everything entrepreneurial. We talk about founder mindset. We talk about the ups and the downs. We talk about all the things that entrepreneurs need to know as they embark on their journey. So I'm Doug Cruitt. I'm the host, and here with me today, I have Marcos Hashimoto, who is the managing director at the Turner School of Entrepreneurship at Bradley University here in Peoria, Illinois. Welcome, Marcos.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, Doug.
So we are honored to have Marcos here because he brings with him decades of experience spanning the globe, quite literally, on the entrepreneurship side, on the academic side. And we're going to first start off with a little bit of background on you, if you could share with our listeners. And then I believe very quickly, what I'm most excited about today is also your expertise in the area of the entrepreneurial mindset. What is it, and what do current entrepreneurs need to know, and what do aspiring entrepreneurs need to know? So first off, though, Marcos, tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Okay, well, first of all, I'm Brazilian. So I came to America in 2016. But by the time I came, I had already a large experience back in Brazil, as in several fields. So I started my career from computer science major to work in the corporations for 20 years plus. 20 years. And I didn't realize by then, but all the projects that I was developing by myself in both of these big organizations, Cargill and Citibank, to name the two largest ones, was new ideas, new projects, new systems. And it came mostly from my own initiative. And I realized later I was an entrepreneur. So I didn't know that. I thought entrepreneurship was only for starting your own business. But I just realized that after starting my studies in entrepreneurship. And that came with my move out from the corporate world to the academic world. And in my first studies, coming out of my MBA degree. So during my MBA, I was still at the Citibank, and I was invited to participate in a business plan or a pitch competition at that time. And we developed a very cool project. To be very summarized, it's a startup back in 2001, a startup that sells books by chapter. So you don't need to buy the entire book. Most of the times your professor just need a few chapters and you don't have to buy the entire book. So that was our idea. It was very innovative at the time. And we were invited to participate at it was new at the time as the Super Bowl of business plan competitions. It was in the University of Texas in Austin. And that was a huge event, still big today. And we moved on until the finals. And we ended up in third place in this competition. The first time Brazilian university went all the way to the finals. And that's when I started my first company. So I quit my job at Citibank. I was about to raise $500,000 as seed money. And then 2001, you know that, NASDAQ crash. Mm-hmm. And all the money was evaporated just simply like that. But I was already contaminated by the entrepreneurial bug. I had to say yeah, I was bitten. So I started my own consulting company. So based on my experience in business planning and computer science, I developed probably the first business plan software in Brazil. So I was commissioned by what is known as SEBRAE. It's a similar as SBA here in America, Small Business Association. And we developed the software and distributed it for free to across the country. And that opened the doors for my consulting company, because together with the software came the consulting. So for 16 years, I helped entrepreneurs to write to their business plans, to understand business background, to pitch to venture capitalists. So I was immersed in this world in São Paulo, which is the core of the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Brazil. And I would say that at that time in Latin America, in São Paulo. So I was all over the places. And in parallel, I started my academic career. So I was one foot in academic career, one foot as a consultant, and working both together in entrepreneurship was very important for me, because I developed my research skills. So studying scientifically entrepreneurship, and at the same time, helping companies to start their own business. So the practice and theory together. And that was rare at that time, to have professors working as consultants as well. And that's when I realized that everything I did back in Citibank or Cargill was entrepreneurship, because the more I learned about entrepreneurship, the more I realized it doesn't need to be just company founders. I saw employees as entrepreneurs like myself. So that was my first book. My first book is now in the 4th edition, and it's called Entrepreneurial Spirit in Organizations. So talking about how organizations, they can nurture the innovative mindset of their employees.
That's wonderful.
And that was a new drive to my consulting company, was for corporations to develop their environment to nurture ideas from employees, and how to compensate them, how to train them. So that was a new vision for my consulting company after that. After my PhD in 2005, I've got some specializations in some areas. And one of them, besides the corporate entrepreneurship, was entrepreneurship education. And that's going to be the bridge to what we are going to talk today about entrepreneurial mindset. So I think it's a background information that's important. When I was going to several ways of educating people, especially undergrad, in terms of entrepreneurship, and I was feeling like, this sounds fake to me. First of all, because it's not about business. I realized that business schools teach about business. We in entrepreneurship, we have to teach something else other than business. And several other people from non-business background, they want to start their own business. Yes, they need some business background. But just business background or business degree doesn't make you an entrepreneur. So I was looking for what else people need in order to become a successful entrepreneur, despite knowledge in business. So I started working on, okay, beyond the business plan, what else do we have? And we came to the individual. So I came up with 3 components of a successful business. The first is the idea. It has to be a great idea. You can write fantastic business plans out of bad ideas. The second is business plan. So you have to use techniques to evaluate and the feasibility of your idea. And this use some projections about the future of how your business is going to behave. That's a business plan. But that is not enough. Great ideas and just business plans is not enough. If you put those great business plans with great ideas in the wrong hands, it will end up in nothing. So I focus on, okay, probably the individual is the third part, is the third component, is the third leg. So I started working on this. What helped me is that my wife is a psychology doctor, and we exchange a lot of ideas. So I came to this concept that was not exactly new, but that had different names over the years, like entrepreneurial thinking, entrepreneurial behavior, entrepreneurial soft skills. And then the one that stuck was entrepreneurial mindset. So what it takes for a regular person in terms of their soft skills or personal characteristics to become successful with a business rather than any other people. What makes them different in terms of behavior? So what makes Steve Jobs different, Bill Gates different, Elon Musk different from the others in terms of the individual, not in terms of their business, but the individual. And that's when I came with the studies in entrepreneurial mindset. And that was back in 2011, 2010, 2011. That's when I started studying entrepreneurial mindset. And then it came to today, and my job here at Bravo University is part is what we do in the classroom, but part also what we do outside the classroom. So one of the things that we know about entrepreneurship is that you don't form entrepreneurs just with classroom lecture classes. They can learn a lot about entrepreneurs, but they don't become entrepreneurs themselves. So to become an entrepreneur, you have to get your hands dirty. You have to go to the practice, have to do things, you have to fail, and you have to leave those emotions, like saying no to you. What do you feel about that? Or failing, what do you feel about that? Or having success in your hand, what do you feel about that? So all these feelings, all these reactions, so everything that goes inside you, that will affect and will grow. You will grow from that. So that is my job at the entrepreneurship talent school, is to provide the students with experiences, with opportunities outside the classroom for them to develop those skills and to leave those emotions as close as possible to the reality world. And that's when comes the mentorship program, the competitions, the guest speakers. So everything that we can bring the real world as a simulated environment, in a protected environment for the students to give it a try to their ideas. Once they graduate and they go to a distributed labs, incubator, or they pitch to venture capital, they have already experienced that experience before. Okay, so that's the idea. And the entrepreneurial mindset is just a complement for that.
I love the experience piece of that. And Bradley University is one of the best that creates these real world experiences. But I love the, putting a focus on, we're going to teach you in the classroom. Great. That's all making you a stronger student, individual, part of a community. And let's give you the opportunity to, like you said, get your hands dirty, because it's one thing to be taught something. It's another thing to do something. So I as someone that's here building as well in Peoria, I appreciate the fact that there's this new generation of young, innovative, driven folks that are forced in a good way to actually do and not just sit and learn and take a test on things. You think your idea is the best in the world, and then you tell it to somebody, and then they give you feedback, and it may not be what you want to hear. How do you react to that? That helps on the entrepreneurial side. And I'm where I'm guessing some of this conversation is going to go next is that entrepreneurial mindset is not just for the entrepreneur. It helps you. So if the student dabbles in entrepreneurship and experiences things and then goes to work for a large corporation, they're still better off for having gone through those experiences.
Exactly. And the entrepreneurial mindset came from my studies of the growth mindset versus fixed mindset. So there are some people that when they face adverse circumstances, instead of getting depressed and going to an endless hole, they somehow, for several reasons, they just raise their head and it's okay, what's next? Let's start it over. Yeah, we failed this time. So this is the kind of growth mindset. So the way you see and the perspectives you use when you face several situations, whatever it's failure or success or a life rupture or losing a job. So you have several circumstances that are beyond your control. It just happens to you. And the way that you face them is a little bit of based on the Stoic philosophy. So I totally believe that entrepreneurs, they are kind of stoics on the way that they face circumstances, but that is also academic speaking, it's the growth mindset. So I started studying the growth mindset, what differentiates these people would have a positive attitude for life. And I picked those elements that differentiate entrepreneurs from managers, because managers also, to be successful, they have to be a positive mindset. They have to have this growth mindset. Otherwise, they will not progress in their career. So there are several successful people out there, managers, athletes, social activists, political leaders. Several of them are successful because of the growth mindset. So growth mindset serves to everybody. So I'm more interested in particular for entrepreneurs. What entrepreneurs have to drive them to move forward in comparison to other successful leaders. And that's when I came with this methodology. I did not create that, but a group of very well structured psychologists, they come from the Eckerd College, and they developed this methodology. And for like when I started working on this 2007, 2008 until today, I've never found anything that would be strong enough, academically validated as this one. So Eckerd College, on their research, they interviewed 500 people among managers and entrepreneurs, and they came up with these 14 scales for entrepreneurial mindset, which is the among all the other positive characteristics that entrepreneurs share with managers and other successful people. They selected these 14 as the ones that differentiate entrepreneurs from managers. Entrepreneurs have higher these characteristics than the other people. Everybody's successful, but these are what differentiates entrepreneurs. So I started looking on these 14 scales, how they came up with that. Okay, this makes sense. So that was validated. And the other thing is that most of these scales or assessments, they measure like a rank of points. The more points you have, the more entrepreneurial you are. And I never believed that because take, for example, creativity. Is entrepreneurs are creative? Yes, they are. But the more creative you are, the more entrepreneurial you are. And I was always thought, no, not necessarily, because if you're too creative, you're all over the places, having new ideas and never executing. And that's not what entrepreneurship is. Or, for example, the capacity to work in taking risks, for example. There's another thing. Everybody says, oh, entrepreneurs, they take risk. But they are not gamblers. They are not totally risk takers. So the higher your risk score doesn't mean that you're more entrepreneur. It means that you're more like a gambler and you're just reckless and you're just trying new things and you don't care about minimizing the risk. So that's not what entrepreneurs are. So the thing good about the entrepreneurial mindset methodology from Eckerd College is that they have levels. So they have a score and you have to get as close as possible to these scores from these 500 entrepreneurs to be successful. And not higher than that. Too much higher, you would be overplaying those characteristics. That can be bad for entrepreneurs. So I run this with some students and some experienced entrepreneurs, and I see that it validates the methodology. When I run into the coaching sessions with entrepreneurs, they say, oh, yes, this is my fault. This is one of the reasons why I'm not successful is because I have too much of that or too little of that. So they understand that the average level that get closer to the entrepreneurial scale is what they have to aim for. That makes sense.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. I'm very curious what the 14 are.
Okay. I don't think we remembered all that.
I think it's very good how you explain that. And we know a lot of founders like this. If you're overly creative, you're never going to see something all the way through. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you are that person, you should probably go find someone that can execute for you, and you could keep coming up with the next plan and just be always a little bit ahead while someone else is actually finishing your project.
Yeah. So one of them that I remember that people sometimes feel that it is a defect and it's actually a good virtue is your familiarity or how comfortable you are with structured environments. So if you are a corporate manager, you work for corporations, you want all the rules established, all the procedures in place, you have everything clean and ready to just execute, everything planned, advised, and ahead of time. Entrepreneurs, they are a little bit messy. So they feel comfortable with ambiguous environments. They work well with no structure at all. The reason why they improvise is because at the very beginning, they don't have much structure. They don't have much resources. They have just 2 or 3 people starting something from scratch. So they have to do everything. So establishing like working hours, checking, clock in, clock out time, or job description, or name badge with your position that makes no sense for entrepreneurs. Okay, we are in the very beginning. At a certain point, when my business is big enough, then we can organize a few things and define job descriptions and roles and everything. But in the very beginning, it's the messy environment. Everybody's doing that kind of everything, very improvisation. And that some people who are kind of have a messy life, they feel, oh, I will never be an entrepreneur because my life is too messy. Well, that's probably the reason why you should stop. Because these people, they don't fit well to the corporate world. They don't feel well. They just look around and say, this is just bureaucracy, you know? So entrepreneurs are like free birds. They want to get out of the cage and exercise the freedom of doing whatever they want. So that's why they are low structured familiarities or the enjoying structure, you know.
Is there, in your research and your experiences as well, is there anything to where if you find out you are scoring a little low in some area, that you can have like very specific tactical things to do so where you can do better in one of those 14 areas?
Yes, there is. So one of the things that the methodology predicts is that you can't just go and do the assessment and take the report and take your own conclusions. The methodology only works if there's a proper person doing that, like a coaching certified coach that I am. And after the assessment, before reading the results, or just after you read the results, you go to a coaching session, 30 minutes to 1 hour, in which the coach will guide you not only to read and interpret the results under the circumstances of what is going on in your life and what are your goals, and help you to establish an action plan in how to get some of these scores closer to the entrepreneurial norm. Doesn't need to be all the scores, but depending on who you are, who you think you are, and what kind of business you're building and what stage of the business you are, probably some of these scores are more important than other. And we can't count that you're going to figure out by yourself without the former preparation for that. So that's why coaching is a mandatory requirement to this assessment. It's not the assessment by itself.
How does one find a certified entrepreneurial mindset practitioner? Just reach out to you directly on LinkedIn, or is there a website to send people to?
There is. If they look for the Entrepreneurial Mindset Profile, EMP, from Ecker College, just Google that, you're going to find it. For 100 and little for the assessment and 1 hour coaching. That is reasonable, I think. If I have some free time, my priority is always Bradley students, of course, but if I have free time, I can do some consultation as well. So going to have a Bradley assessment, it will cost probably $35, so way cheaper, but it depends on my availability. It's not that perfect. And I know SBDC is going on having probably Amy Lambert, you know her, to get certified also in the methodology. So yeah, SBDC may be prepared to make this assessment.
That's great. And the SBDC, for our listeners, is a small business development center here on Bradley University campus, but they're throughout the country.
Yeah.
So I know we work with a lot of investors, and as you're talking more and more, it seems like it may be beneficial for some investors. Hey, let's have this company and these founders, these leaders that we're about to invest in. Maybe we should have them.
That makes total sense, because one thing that I've learned in my trajectory is when you have, for the investors, a venture capitalist, for example, if they have two options to invest, a great business idea, a great well-structured business plan with an average entrepreneur against an average idea with a great, totally entrepreneurial-minded entrepreneur, they pick the second one. So they think in general, and that's after various conversations with the angel investors, that an average person can ruin a great idea, while a great entrepreneur can turn an average idea into success.
So true.
At the end of the day, investors invest in people, not business ideas.
That is so true.
That's why it makes total sense that investors, if I'm putting money in this company, I want you to have assessment so we can work together on your skills to make sure that this will go well, to increase the chances that this is going to be a success.
That's wonderful. So, Marcos, before we wrap up, is there any words of wisdom based upon your experience or research that you would like to share with our listeners? Some as detailed or as short as you'd like.
Going on the same direction, I would say one thing, out of the several 14 different scales, most of them are behavior related, but some of them are personality related. So personality related characteristics, they are not as used to mold and to transform as skills. Skills you can train, you can practice, you can learn, you can develop. But personality, you were building with that characteristic. You are wired on this characteristic since you were born. Like, for example, you are shy, you will always be shy. So you can handle that some way, but you will always be shy person. Mm-hmm. So this is a personal characteristics, personality. So one of the things that I recommend, despite taking the assessment or not, and I've learned this over the time, is that entrepreneurship is a buzzword today. So everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. There's so many influencers in social media and talking about what do you need to be a successful entrepreneur. They give these several advices and books. And the fact is that you open these books and you don't know which of these advices serves to you. So sometimes they say you have to be creative, but you are already creative. So am I going to enforce something that I am already good at and run the risk of overplaying that? So there's not all advices that will serve to you. The only way for you to get the best advices and to get a better self-training development is with self-knowledge. You have to learn who you are. Most people think they know. You don't, especially if you're coming from the corporate world to become an entrepreneur. I am successful as an executive. I will be successful as an entrepreneur. No, because it will require different skills, different mindset. So don't assume you know who you are. And don't take the chances of trying by learning by trial. Like, for example, you start and I will learn along the way. You will lose a lot of money and time. So go to a self-awareness journey. It can go on therapy. It can go from reading, but focus on yourself first and trying to learn who you are first. So the more you know about who you are, the better you will filter what makes sense for you or not. That makes sense.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And it's a little bit similar to that example of, when you're on a plane and the oxygen mask drop down, put it on yourself first before you help out your kid or your spouse or whoever next to you. You need to focus on you so that you can then go do the work that you seek to do. So Marcos, how can people get in touch with you? And are there any other resources that you want to point our listeners to?
Well, the several resources are including, of course, the Entrepreneurial Labs and Peoria Next Innovation Center. So these are the two business incubators here in town. But also, of course, SBDC and all the GBCs that's around town, Minority Business Development Center, Women Business Development Center, several of these networking events and groups of entrepreneurs. So be part of a network and exchange your pains and gains with other people who are suffering the same thing as you. These are also great resources just to share and to learn from others is important. And of course, the Bradley University, not only our courses, but because you can have this connection to several of the things that we do at the Bradley University that is open to the community, like the Innovation Expo or the distinguished speaker. So these are all events open to the public. So go to these events, access these resources. Most of them are for free, okay? And we are in a small town. So that's the good thing that I see in Peoria in comparison to São Paulo, which is a big city. Here, it's easy to connect with people. It's easy to bump to people in events. And this is extremely valuable, because you get to know what is happening on town and be part of those things. And if you want to get in touch with me, you will easily find Marcos Hashimoto, Bradley University. You will find my contact information there. Very easy.
Very good. Well, Marcos, thank you so much for coming on Unfiltered at Distillery Labs today. And thanks for all that you do for the ecosystem. I think You spent decades experiencing things, both as an entrepreneur yourself, but then also diving deep into that so that you are showing an easier path to that next generation of entrepreneurs. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Please call me again.
Yes.
Oftentimes entrepreneurs and those that are building something special, something bigger than themselves, we often don't stop and celebrate the wins as they happen. We just keep building, keep going. We want to maintain momentum and build upon that. That's great. However, you also do need to stop to celebrate. And that is exactly what we're doing July 30th here at Distillery Labs, where we turn 2 years old. Now, this is a big milestone for us. We describe ourselves as a startup for startups. And so we are still learning and growing, iterating in how we serve the community. And the July 30th is the time to come out to see what all is going on here. So we will have vendors out in Fulton Plaza, weather permitting. We'll have food trucks out front. We'll have a DJ outside. And on the inside, we're going to have some live music, some more startup founders that are building some really cool stuff in this building, and just an opportunity to engage with the community. We expect around 400 to 500 people minimum that are going to come through our doors that day from 11 to 4. We're also going to have panels with local startup founders that are actively building their startups as we speak. And we're also going to have an angel investor panel where they're going to talk about what do they look for in an investment, what resources, what do they look for in a founder. A lot of opportunities to learn, grow, and connect. So join us July 30th here at Distillery Labs, 201 Southwest Adams Street in downtown Peoria, for food, fun, community, connection, education, motivation, inspiration, innovation, everything. We hope to see you there. Thanks.